I found my dead mother's jewelry set inside my best friend's purse, and in that moment something in me snapped in a way I didn't know was possible. Not broke. Snapped. Like a fault line that had been trembling for years and finally split open. I remember the exact sound my voice made when I asked her, "Why do you have this?" Because it didn't sound human. It sounded like someone drowning. She didn't even flinch. She just looked annoyed, like I was ruining her day by catching her with the last thing my mother ever gave me before she died. Her name is Hannah. We've been friends since middle school. The kind of friendship that survived bad hair, braces, breakups, boyfriends, dorm rooms, early jobs, all of it. Or so I thought. People say toxic friendships creep quietly. I didn't believe that until I realized mine had been rotting for years. Looking back now, the signs were everywhere. Tiny things at first. Borrowed shirts that never came back. Books that somehow ended up permanently on her shelves. Makeup she forgot to return. I shrugged it off because that's what you do when you've known someone your whole life. You tell yourself it's not worth fighting about. You tell yourself it's just stuff. You tell yourself you're being dramatic. But it grew. It always grows. When we were 22, she borrowed my black blazer for a job interview. Weeks passed. Then months. I saw her wearing it in a photo she posted online. When I asked for it back, she said, "God, chill." It was basically stretched out anyway. It wasn't. But I let it go. When we were 24, she borrowed a candle that had sentimental value, one my mom and I picked out together when she was still healthy. When I asked for it back, she said she forgot where she put it. It magically appeared months later at her apartment, half used. I let it go too. Then there were the things she never admitted taking. A necklace. A vintage scarf. 2 of my favorite hardcover books. One of my sweaters that looked suspiciously like it shrank in her dryer. She always had an excuse. Always a reason. Always a tone that suggested I was the unreasonable one for demanding my belongings back. Still, I stayed. Because I thought loyalty meant absorbing small hurts. Because I thought lifelong friendships were worth the discomfort. Because I didn't know that people like her feed on those quiet concessions. Everything changed after my mom died. My mother's death hollowed me out. I was 27. She'd had a stroke. We had no warning. One day she was texting me about dinner plans, the next she was gone. The grief was violent. Sudden. Chaotic. It made the world feel too bright and too sharp at the same time. Hannah stepped in immediately. Too immediately. She showed up at my apartment with food, blankets, candles, tea, tissues, a care package that looked like something out of a Pinterest mental health board. She held my hand. She made me tea. She wiped my tears. She told everyone I needed space. She said she would help me heal. People thought she was being a saint. Now I realize she saw an opportunity. Because a grieving person is easier to control. Easier to manipulate. Easier to take from. The first thing she asked to borrow after my mom died was a hoodie I'd gotten for Christmas the year before. She wanted something oversized and comfortable, she said. I gave it to her because I was too exhausted to care. A week later, she posted a mirror selfie in it with the caption, "Cozy Days." When I asked for it back, she said she spilled coffee on it and had to deep clean it. It never reappeared. Then she asked for a pair of gold hoop earrings my mom bought me. Just for dinner, she said. She returned them 3 weeks later, tarnished. The boundaries blurred. And I let them blur. Because grief makes you smaller. More pliable. More eager to avoid conflict. Hannah filled the space where my mother's calm presence had once lived. She made herself indispensable. She controlled my schedule. She answered my texts before I could. She made decisions for me. She started saying things like, "Your mom would want you to rest," or "Your mom wouldn't want you wearing that yet," as if she had inherited maternal authority. But the worst moment came 6 months later when I was packing boxes to finally clean out my mother's old house. I didn't want to do it. But the mortgage needed addressing, the belongings needed sorting, the will needed executing. It was one of the most painful, vulnerable weekends of my life. Hannah insisted on helping. She insisted hard. She said, "You shouldn't go through that alone." She said, You'll break down if I'm not there. She guilted me. She pushed. She showed up with snacks and gloves and labeled bins like she was preparing for a TV home makeover show. I didn't know then that she'd been waiting for this. Waiting for access. Waiting for an opening. Waiting for a chance to take something she knew I valued more than anything else I owned. My mother's jewelry set. It wasn't expensive. It wasn't designer. It wasn't flashy. But it was the set she wore to every significant moment of my life: birthdays, graduations, holidays. It was the last thing my father ever bought her before he passed. It was her good luck charm. Her treasured piece. She kept it in a velvet box in her bedside table. As we boxed things, I noticed Hannah gravitating toward the bedroom. She lingered in drawers. She rummaged through closets. She asked too many questions. What's this worth? Who gets that? Are you selling this? Do you even wear that? And I told myself she was trying to help. But I should have paid more attention to the way she kept hovering near the nightstand. At the end of the day, the velvet jewelry box was gone. I convinced myself I misplaced it. Grief fog is real. Memory blurs. Everything hurts. I told myself I'd check again the next time I came back. Spoiler, it wasn't misplaced. I didn't see the jewelry set again until 3 months later, the day I unzipped her purse to get her keys after she insisted she'd lost them. We were supposed to meet for brunch. She'd gotten out of her car, slammed the door, then realized her purse was inside. She handed me the bag and said, "You have smaller hands. Get the keys." I opened the purse, and the velvet box was right there, sitting on top of her wallet. My mother's jewelry set. The one she wore to every important moment of my life. The one that disappeared the day we cleaned out the house. The one she swore she hadn't seen when I asked if she'd come across anything valuable. I froze. My vision tunneled. I felt my pulse in my teeth. I opened the box. Everything was there. The necklace. The earrings. The ring. My heart dropped to the floor. And when I turned to Hannah, she was already watching me, arms crossed, face unapologetic. "Oh," she said. That? That? Like I'd caught her with a generic Target bracelet. "Why do you have this?" I asked quietly. She rolled her eyes like I was being hysterical. "Relax," she said. "You weren't using it." "My mother's jewelry? It deserves to be worn," she said. "You just keep it in a drawer." At least I appreciate it. I felt something rupture inside me. Something that had been stretched thin for years. I should have yelled. I should have cursed. Instead, I whispered, "Give it back." She snatched the purse, pulled out the box, held it like she had rightful ownership. "You're being ridiculous," she said. "You wouldn't even notice it was gone if you hadn't gone snooping." I choked on air. "Snooping? It's my mom's. It's just stuff," she said sharply. "You're so dramatic. God, no wonder your mom worried about you." That line did something I can't undo. My hands started shaking. My throat felt like concrete. And her expression shifted, not to guilt, not to regret, but to calculation. She realized she pushed too far. And instead of backing down, she doubled down. "You don't need it," she said. "I should have had it months ago. Honestly, your mom would have wanted me to have it." My mother didn't even like her. Not really. She tolerated her. She tried to keep peace. She tried to protect me from the friction. And here was Hannah rewriting history so she could justify stealing the last sentimental thing I had. But that wasn't even the worst part of that day. Because once I confronted her, she didn't apologize. She didn't return anything. She didn't show remorse. She told me everything else she had taken. And that was the moment I realized my best friend had been robbing me in slow, careful pieces for more than a decade. She leaned against her car and crossed her arms like we were arguing about who ate the last slice of pizza, not standing in a parking lot with my dead mom's jewelry between us. And when she finally opened her mouth, she said, "If we're going to do this, then let's just do it, okay? You're acting like this is some huge betrayal when you know I've always taken care of your stuff better than you do." And something about the way she said "always" made my stomach twist because it sounded less like a slip and more like a confession. So I asked her, What do you mean, always? And she shrugged, eyes sliding away for the first time since I'd opened the box. You're not good with things, she said. You never have been. You leave things lying around. You forget where you put stuff. I just hold on to things for you. And there it was, the reframe, the rewrite of reality. She wasn't a thief. She was a caretaker. She wasn't stealing. She was holding onto pieces of my life I didn't even know were missing. I felt my voice go very calm in the way it only does when I'm on the edge of losing it completely. What else are you holding on to for me? I asked, and she rolled her eyes again like I was being overdramatic. Oh my God, you make it sound so sinister, she said. It's a few things, relax, like that navy dress you never wore anymore, and the leather jacket that looked better on me anyway. You literally told me I could keep that one, which I hadn't. I remember the jacket. It had been a birthday gift from my mom the year before she died. We bought it together on sale, and she'd said, "You need at least one thing that makes you walk taller." I remember Hannah borrowing it for a date. I remember asking for it back and her saying she'd left it at a friend's house and would grab it next time. Apparently, next time never came. You said you lost that jacket, I said slowly, and she smirked, just a tiny curl at the corner of her mouth. Well, she said, I found it. And that was the moment I realized she got something out of this. Not just the things themselves, but the feeling of having them, the knowledge that she could lie to my face and I'd still hug her when she cried. She liked the power of it. What about the letter? I asked suddenly, and she blinked, thrown off for the first time. What letter? My heart hammered, because I hadn't thought about that letter in months. It was a letter my mom wrote me when I moved out of her house, the last long handwritten thing she gave me. I'd kept it in a small wooden box with a few photos and ticket stubs, and a few weeks after she died, I looked for it and it was gone. I'd told myself I must have misplaced it, that grief had scattered my brain, but standing there with the jewelry box in my hand, the missing letter felt like a puzzle piece snapping into place. The letter my mom wrote me, I said, the one I kept in the blue box in my closet. You helped me pack that box, you remember. Her gaze flickered. Just a fraction. Her mouth pressing into a thin line before she forced a laugh. You're really digging now, she said. Why would I want some sappy letter from your mom? And the way she said your mom was knife sharp. Because you like having things that matter to me, I said. And my voice cracked on matter, and I hated that she could still do that to me. She shifted tactics. You're grieving, Emily, she said, softening her tone the way you might talk to a child. You're looking for someone to blame because you feel out of control. This is about your mom, not about me. You're projecting. If anyone else had said those words, I might have believed them. I might have gone home and gaslit myself into thinking I imagined the jewelry in her purse. But the velvet box was still in my hand, heavy and real and undeniable. Give it back, I said again, sharper this time, and then you're going to tell me what else you've taken. I don't have to tell you anything, she snapped, the mask slipping again. We're friends. Friends share. You've borrowed my stuff plenty of times. I never interrogated you about it. Remember my red heels you scuffed at that wedding? I laughed. A harsh sound that didn't match the sunny parking lot around us. You gave me those heels, I said. They didn't even fit you right, and I offered to replace them when I tripped. You said they were a gift. Same difference, she muttered, and I finally realized something very simple and very ugly in her head. Every line between mine and hers was blurry unless she needed it not to be. If I took something of hers, it was borrowing. If she took something of mine, it was sharing. If she gave me something, it was a gift she could bring up forever if I gave her something. It was proof I owed her more. I stepped closer, heart pounding. If you don't give me that jewelry back right now, I'll call the police, I said, and even as I said it, I couldn't believe the words were coming out of my mouth about my best friend. She scoffed. You're not calling the police over this, she said. You'll look insane. You'll embarrass yourself. Our friends will think you've lost it. Oh, Emily had a breakdown over a necklace, and the worst part was that a part of me believed her, because she wasn't wrong about how people talk. They don't see the pattern. They only see the explosion. They don't see the years of little cuts. They only see the blood on the floor when you finally say enough. My hands shook, but I unlocked my phone and held it up anyway. Thumb hovering over the keypad. "Try me," I said, and for the first time real fear flashed across her face. Not remorse, not guilt, just fear of consequences. She yanked the jewelry box out of my hand, clutched it for a second like she might bolt, then shoved it at me so hard it almost fell. "Fine," she snapped. "Take it. Jesus, you're so ungrateful. I keep something safe for you, and this is the thanks I get." "You stole it from my mother's house," I said, clutching the box like a lifeline. "Who cares where you found it?" she said. "You weren't even wearing it. You were just going to leave it in a drawer and cry over it once a year." "It was mine to leave in a drawer," I said. "It was mine to cry over, mine to keep. You don't get to decide what I do with my mother's things." She rolled her eyes. "Whatever," she said. "If you'd stop obsessing for 2 seconds, you'd realize the bigger issue is you've been distant and judgy for months. Acting like you're better than me now that you're the tragic daughter with a dead mom." I felt like the parking lot tilted. "Are you serious?" I whispered. "You think I like this? You think I wanted my mother to die so I could what? Win some imaginary competition?" She shrugged. "People act weird around you now," she said. "They coddle you. They treat you like this fragile glass thing, like I'm supposed to tiptoe all the time. It's exhausting. I miss when we could just trade clothes and go out and not have every little thing be about your feelings." There it was. The truth under everything. My grief inconvenienced her. My boundaries inconvenienced her. And the thought that I might actually be separate from her, with my own needs that didn't serve her, was unacceptable. I stared at her, trying to reconcile the girl I once snuck into concerts with and the woman standing in front of me now. Minimizing the theft of my mother's jewelry to trading clothes. "What about the others?" I asked, the words tumbling out. "What others?" she said, suddenly wary. "The other things you held on to for me. The jacket, the letter, the books, the sweater. And while we're at it, what about Mark?" Her eyes flicked. "What about him?" she asked, defensive. "Mark was my ex. The longest relationship I'd had before my current boyfriend. We dated for 3 years in our mid-20s, and then, almost overnight, he'd cooled, pulling away, dodging calls, eventually breaking up with me with a vague explanation about me being distant and secretive and not fully honest, words that had never fit, but I'd been too heartbroken to push. After we split, Hannah had slid into the space he left with ease, telling me he was trash, telling me I was too good for him, telling me she'd always known he was wrong for me. At the time, it sounded like support. Later, it felt like something else. "Did you talk to him before we broke up?" I asked now, voice trembling. "Did you tell him anything?" She laughed, high and sharp. "Are we really bringing up Mark circa 3 boyfriends ago?" she said. "You broke up because he's an insecure man baby. That's on him, not me. He said someone told him I was flirting with other people," I said, the memory surfacing like something I'd shoved to the bottom of a lake. "He said he didn't trust me anymore. He wouldn't say who said it, just that it was someone who cared about him and knew me well." Her smile faltered. "Well, if the shoe fits," she muttered, and my heart dropped because that wasn't a denial. "Not really, did you?" I asked. "Did you tell him I was cheating on him?" "I never said you were cheating," she snapped. "I just maybe mentioned that you get attention, that guys are always flirting with you at bars, and he asked if you flirt back, and I said you're friendly, and sometimes you don't see when lines get blurry." "Lines get blurry," I repeated. "You told him I couldn't be trusted." "No," she said. "I told him he should pay more attention if he didn't want to lose you." "You knew I wasn't flirting," I said. "You were with me." She rolled her eyes. "Details," she said. "If he was so easy to spook, that's not my fault. I was looking out for you. If a guy can't handle a little competition, he doesn't deserve you." I laughed again, that laugh that tasted like metal. "A little competition," I said. "Did you sleep with him?" Her head snapped up. "Wow," she said. "Now we're just throwing anything at the wall." "No, Emily, I didn't sleep with your ex. Contrary to what you apparently think, my life doesn't revolve around whatever man looks at you." "But you wanted it to," I said. The puzzle Pieces finally rearranging into a picture I didn't want to see. The weird tension whenever I had something she didn't. A job, a relationship, a piece of clothing, a moment of attention. The way she'd subtly knock it down, plant seeds of doubt. The way she'd later swoop in to comfort me when those things fell apart. She'd done it with a high school boyfriend too, I realized, suddenly remembering a time she'd confessed to accidentally telling him a story I wanted kept between us, again framed. As looking out for me, what else, I asked, my voice barely above a whisper now, what else have you taken, or broken, or interfered with? You're spiraling, she said. This is exactly why people think you're too sensitive. You can't just accept that sometimes things don't work out and you need someone to blame. And I'm convenient because I'm always there. You're convenient because you put yourself in the center of everything, I said. You offer to help with my mom's house, then walk out with her jewelry. You comfort me about breakups you helped engineer. You borrow things and never bring them back, then make me feel crazy for caring. You insert yourself and then act like a martyr when anyone calls you on it. Wow. Did your therapist help you write that? She sneered. And there it was, the contempt, the way she spit out the word therapist like it was an insult. Yes, I said. Actually, therapy did help me see that making somebody else comfortable at the expense of my own boundaries isn't love. It's fear, and I'm done living like that. She shook her head. You're going to throw away 20 years of friendship over a necklace and some clothes, she said, over a few misunderstandings. It's not a necklace, I said, holding up the box. It's the last piece of my mother, and it's not a few misunderstandings. It's a pattern of you taking and calling it love. If I hadn't been there after your mom died, you would have fallen apart, she said. Everyone said so. Your aunt, your coworkers, they told me you were lucky to have me. I was lucky to have someone, I said. But it wasn't you. Not really. It was whoever I imagined you could be if I ignored all the things that hurt. And I'm finally admitting those are not the same person. We stood there in the thick summer air, car engines humming around us, the mall noise in the distance, two women in their 30s having the kind of breakup I'd only ever prepared for with romantic partners. So what now, she said. You going to make a list of everything I've ever touched and demand it back? You going to go around telling people I'm a thief? You going to make this my identity? And that was the moral dilemma crashing into me all at once. Because I knew how it would look on the outside. People had seen us together at every major moment of my life. She was in my wedding photos to Mark. She was at my mom's funeral. She was at my birthdays, baby showers, moving days to our circle. She wasn't the friend who steals. She was Hannah and Emily. A unit, a story. No one likes to rewrite their stories. I'm going to ask you one time, I said. Do you have anything else of mine at your apartment that you haven't told me about? She hesitated just long enough to tell me the truth. A few things, she said finally, and my stomach dropped. What things? It doesn't matter, she said. Old stuff. Stuff you don't even remember. Why dredge it all up? It'll just hurt you. And you'll make it into some big betrayal when it's not. I promise if you just calm down. No, I said, surprising both of us with how firm it sounded. If you don't bring everything back by tonight, I will report what you did with the jewelry to the police. And I'll tell them about anything else we find. She stared at me like she'd never seen me before. You'd really do that to me, she said slowly. You'd really try to get me arrested over this. No, I said, I'm not doing anything to you. I'm just finally not protecting you from the consequences of your own choices. She laughed. Bitter. Listen to you, she said, all healed and self-righteous. Whatever, Emily. Go ahead. Be the victim. But when everyone turns on you for blowing this up, don't come crying to me. I won't, I said, and I meant it. I turned, walked back to my car, put the box on the passenger seat, and drove home with my hands clenched so tight on the steering wheel they cramped. I cried the whole way, not just for the jewelry, but for the version of my life where I still believed Hannah and I would grow old together as the kind of best friends people write movies about. That version crumbled that day in a strip mall parking lot. She did bring things back that night, but not because she wanted to do the right thing. She did it in the pettiest way possible. She texted me, Your Majesty, your crop will be on your porch in 10. Then 10 minutes later, I heard a car door slam and something heavy hit the front step. I opened the door to find a cardboard box, flaps half open like she'd packed it in a hurry. Inside was a messy pile of my life, the leather jacket, wrinkled and smelling like her perfume, a handful of books with my name still written inside the covers in my mom's careful script, the hoodie, pilled and stretched, a sweater I'd forgotten existed, my old concert tee, the candle jar, now empty and scraped clean of wax. She'd kept the jar, burned the candle, and decided the empty glass still technically counted as returning it. Tossed in on top of everything else was the blue wooden box I'd been thinking about in the parking lot. My hands shook as I picked it up, opened it. The ticket stubs were there. The photo of my mom and me at the beach. The little pressed flower she'd taped in there for me once. But the letter wasn't. The space where it had been was empty. I felt like someone had punched a hole through my chest. I texted her. "Where's the letter?" No answer. I texted again. "Hannah, where is the letter my mom wrote me?" The dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally a reply. "I don't have your stupid letter. Maybe you lost it. You lose things all the time." And that was that, maybe. She had it. Maybe she'd thrown it away. Maybe I really had lost it. I'll never know. All I know is that I will never again get to read my mother's words in her handwriting, never again get to trace the ink with my finger, never again get to see the way she wrote my name on the envelope. And that loss feels sharper than any jacket or candle or sweater. That loss feels like something sacred was taken and then denied. I spent the next week grieving two people at once, my mom, again, and Hannah, in a new way. I didn't tell many people the full story at first. I just said we'd had a falling out, that we needed space. I was afraid that if I told them she'd stolen from me, they'd say what she predicted. "You're really that upset over stuff. She's going through a lot. You know how she is. Can you just talk it out?" But the silence ate at me, and the anger did too. So I told one person, my cousin Jess, who had always been a little suspicious of Hannah's intensity. I told her everything, the jewelry, the clothes, the letter, Mark. The way Hannah had framed herself as my savior while quietly pocketing pieces of my life. Jess didn't tell me I was overreacting. She didn't ask what I'd done to provoke it. She just said, "That's messed up, and I'm so sorry." Then she said something that stuck in my brain like a pin. "You know she did this with my sister, right?" I blinked. "What?" "The taking, the borrowing, the low-key sabotage," Jess said. "When we were younger, she used to borrow clothes from my sister all the time and never return them. And there was that one boyfriend she was way too flirty with. We always thought he lost interest because my sister was busy with school. But a year later, he told her someone hinted she was cheating on him. He wouldn't say who. We had our suspicions. My stomach turned. "Why didn't anyone say anything?" I asked. Jess shrugged. "Because your friendship with her was intense," she said. "And honestly, you were so loyal. Anytime anyone critiqued Hannah, you'd defend her like it was your job. You wouldn't have heard it. She wasn't wrong. I'd built my identity partly on being Hannah's best friend. Defending her made me feel important, necessary. She's just had such a hard life." I'd say, "She doesn't mean it. She's wild, but she has a good heart." How many times had I repeated that line, soothing my own discomfort as much as everyone else's? It was embarrassing to realize how complicit I'd been in my own mistreatment, not because I caused it, but because I kept handing her new chances to take over and over. After Jess, I told my brother, my aunt, a couple of close friends. Their reactions were similar, a mix of shock and that slow nod people do when something finally clicks into place. "I always wondered why your stuff went missing," my brother said, remembering all the times Hannah had been helping me pack. One friend admitted she'd stopped lending Hannah things years ago. "She never brought my dress back after that wedding," she said. "I thought it was petty to mention it, but I just started saying no when she asked." "Must be nice," I said, not unkindly, "to feel like you could say no." That was the core of it, really. I had never truly believed I could say no and still be loved. Not with Hannah, not with anyone. My mom had been kind, but she'd also been a peacemaker. always smoothing, always asking me to be the bigger person, which sometimes meant swallowing hurts so my grandmother wouldn't throw a fit. I'd learned early that the easiest way to keep the peace was to give in. Give up, give away. Hannah had just taken that training and run with it. A few weeks later, the social fallout began. Mutual friends started texting. Hey, everything okay between you and Hannah? She says you accused her of stealing your mom's jewelry. She's really upset. She says she was just keeping it safe. She had her version ready, of course, in her story. She was the loyal friend who'd stepped up when no one else did, and I was the unstable grief girl who'd turned on her over a misunderstanding. Did you tell them you put it in your purse without asking? I texted her once in a moment of weakness. She replied, they don't need all the messy details. I just told them you're hurting and lashing out. They get it. The audacity of that made me sit down, like physically sink to the floor. She was painting herself as the compassionate one for not telling people messy details that would make her look bad, while erasing the fact that those details were the entire story. I had a choice then: keep quiet and let her version stand so I didn't look dramatic, or tell the truth and accept that some people would label me petty or vindictive. The moral dilemma wasn't philosophical, it was painfully practical. It was about whether I was willing to let my name be tied to words like unstable and overreacting again, the way it had been when Mark broke up with me and she comforted me with one hand while lighting the match with the other. This time, I picked the truth, quietly, not in a blast post or a mass message, but in one-on-one conversations. When people asked, is it true? I said, yes. She took my mom's jewelry without telling me. She admitted she'd kept other things. She never showed any real remorse. I'm allowed to draw a line. Some people believed me immediately. Some didn't know what to believe. Some tried to stay neutral, which mostly meant staying close to the person who demanded more attention. And surprise, that wasn't me. A few dropped off entirely, answering my texts with the kind of short, polite responses you give someone you've already chosen to move away from. That hurt, but not enough to make me take it back, because every time I thought about reaching out to Hannah to smooth things over, I pictured that velvet box in her purse and the empty space in the blue box where my mother's letter should have been. Months passed. Life moved forward in the way life insists on doing. I wore my mother's jewelry set once to a small ceremony where a bench was dedicated in her name at the park she loved. The metal felt warm against my skin, heavy, like a shield. I cried the whole way home, not because of Hannah, but because for the first time since the parking lot, the jewelry felt like mine again, not something I'd failed to protect. Mark reached out once, out of nowhere. He'd seen me tagged in a mutual friends post and sent a simple message, hey, I heard about your mom. I'm really sorry. Somehow that turned into a longer conversation. Apologies for how things ended. He admitted someone had implied I wasn't faithful back then. She said you were flirting with other guys all the time, that you told her you were bored. He wrote, I was insecure. I believed her. I shouldn't have. You never actually gave me a reason not to trust you. I just wanted you to know that now. My chest tightened. Was it Hannah? I asked, even though I already knew. There was a long pause before he replied. Yeah, he wrote. She said she was worried about you and didn't want to see you get hurt. It sounds stupid now, but back then it felt like she was doing me a favor. I stared at the screen for a long time. Mark wasn't some villain ex. He was just a person who'd been handed a carefully curated narrative at the exact moment his insecurities were loudest. Hannah had always known where to press. Thanks for telling me. I finally wrote. I needed to hear that. After we finished texting, I sat on the couch and realized I felt lighter. Not because I wanted him back, I didn't. We'd both changed too much. But because a piece of the story I'd carried as I wasn't enough slid into its correct place as someone else meddled where they had no right. And once again, the pattern was impossible to ignore. Take, twist, comfort, repeat. Almost a year after the jewelry incident, I saw Hannah again, not by choice. I was at the grocery store, pushing a cart with a squeaky wheel. thinking about nothing more important than whether to buy the fancy yogurt, when I heard a familiar voice say, "Wow, you're really going to pretend you don't see me?" I turned, and there she was, hair different, slightly shorter, same expression, a mix of amusement and challenge. My body reacted before my brain did. My heart sped up. My palms sweated. "Hi," I said stiffly. She looked me up and down, eyes lingering on the necklace at my throat. Yes, I was wearing my mother's jewelry that day, small acts of defiance. "So we're doing the Cold War thing," she said. How mature. Very therapy chic. I almost laughed. It was such a classic Hannah line. "What do you want?" I asked, tired, honestly, more than angry. "To talk," she said, "to clear the air. We were friends for what, 20 years? It's dumb to just never speak again over some blown out of proportion drama. You stole from me," I said quietly. "You lied to me. You messed with my relationships. You called my grief an act. That's not some drama." She sighed. "I apologized," she said, which she hadn't really, not in any way that counted. "I brought your stuff back. I thought time would give you perspective, but apparently you've just decided I'm Satan and you're Saint Emily, patron of boundaries. I decided I deserve friends who don't treat my life like a lost and found," I said. "I decided I believe my own eyes when I see my mom's jewelry in someone else's bag." She rolled her eyes again. "You love that line," she said. "Your mom's jewelry. Like you're the only person who's ever had someone die. We're all dealing with things, I've had my own losses, too, but you don't see me using them as an excuse to punish people. It was always like this with her. Everything a competition, even pain. "I'm not punishing you," I said. "I'm just not rewarding you anymore." "By what?" "Taking me out of your life," she said. "How is that not punishment?" "Because I'm not doing it to teach you a lesson," I said, surprising myself with the clarity of it. "I'm doing it to protect myself. The fact that you see those as the same thing is part of the problem." For a moment, just a second, she looked actually wounded. "So that's it," she said, voice low. "We're strangers now." I thought about all the years we'd spent fused at the hip, the nights on her couch, the secrets, the shared meals and borrowed dresses and whispered fears. The ways we'd been there for each other when no one else was. There had been good times. I wouldn't rewrite my own history to pretend otherwise, but I also wouldn't let those good moments be used as a shield for everything that came after. "No," I said finally, "we're not strangers. I know you too well for that. We're former friends," which is somehow worse, but also more honest. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You'll miss me," she said. "One day you'll realize no one else will love you like I did." "I really hope that's true," I said, and watched the words hit her like a slap. She stared at me for a long moment, then shook her head, grabbed her basket, and walked away without looking back. I stood there for a minute in the dairy aisle, breathing, feeling my pulse slowly settle, and realized that for the first time since everything exploded, I felt something close to peace. Not because I'd won, there's no winning in these situations, but because I'd finally answered my own question about what I owed her, what I owed myself, what I owed the memory of my mother, who would have been furious to see anyone treat me the way Hannah had. These days, my life is quieter, my circle is smaller. When people come over and ask about a jacket, a book, a mug, I don't feel that small spike of panic wondering if it'll mysteriously vanish. I still sometimes reach for the blue box and feel a stab of grief when I remember the letter isn't there. I let myself cry when that happens, not because of Hannah specifically anymore, but because some losses don't shrink. They just become part of the landscape of who you are. I wear my mother's jewelry on days that matter, and on random Tuesdays, I try to honor her by not being the kind of woman who keeps the peace at any cost. I'm still learning what healthy friendship looks like. It's slower, less intense, less dramatic. No one has declared herself my sister in the first month. No one has borrowed anything more serious than a pen. Sometimes, if I'm honest, I miss the high of my old friendship, the way Hannah could make a Tuesday feel like a movie, the way she made everything louder, brighter, more But then I remember the hangover, the missing things, the hollowing out that came with always being the one expected to understand, forgive, and hand over whatever she needed, and I choose the quiet again, over and over, people like to say. It's just stuff. When things go missing, like that makes it hurt less, but it's never just stuff. Not when someone repeatedly decides that what's yours is theirs if they want it badly enough. Not when they take the objects that carry your memories and then insist you're crazy for noticing. It's about respect, about trust, about whether a person sees you as a whole human being or as a convenient source of comfort and property. My toxic friend didn't show up in my life waving a red flag. She showed up with a hair straightener and a borrowed sweater and a promise we'd be best friends forever. I don't regret the years we had, but I don't regret ending it either. If anything, I'm grateful for the way it forced me to learn that. Boundaries aren't punishments, they're fences around the parts of you that are irreplaceable, like a letter from your mom, like a ring she used to twist on her finger, like the version of yourself that finally decides you've given away enough.